is entitled Digital Collaboration to Achieve Carbon Neutrality.
Okay, are we all set? Very good. Welcome, everyone. I feel like we need to start with a quick deep breath and exhale. It's been a busy day here in the room and all over a cup. So, we're here to talk about digital collaboration to achieve carbon neutrality. We'll have an opening by Luis Neves, the CEO of Jesse. We also have Chris White, who is the president of NEC Labs in based out of the US, and Saeed, who is heads procurement for EAND, and that's just a lot. And so we're going to start with an opening from Luis, and then Saeed will follow, and then Chris, and then we'll have a panel conversation. Luis.
Thank you so much, Kevin, and good afternoon, everybody. Um One can see that this has been a long day, and it will be like this the next 10 days, morning to evening. But thank you so much for joining us today. We are here to talk about carbon neutrality and technology, how technology can help to achieve carbon neutrality. This is something very difficult and very challenging. And Jesse is very proud to be part of this initiative that NEC and EAND are working together. And we will be providing our expertise, our know-how, our research to support a successful project. And it is extremely important to make this project successful because then it can be applied across the industry in the context of what we are talking here at COP28, which is about carbon emission reductions. And the most challenging part of it, which is the supply chain and the scope 3 emissions. And we are actually thrilled about this project. Uh, I hope, and I do not hope, I'm sure that this will be a successful project, very challenging for all of us, for the three partners. But I used to say, easy things everybody does, difficult things only special people is able to do. And I'm sitting here together with two special people, and I'm sure that we will be delivering a successful outcome for this. So I will not say much more because purpose today is to understand what the project is all about, how this collaboration is moving forward, how can we work together, each one in our own capacities. So Jesse has an industry initiative with its know-how, its history in researching and understanding scope 3 emissions, developing standards, as we have done recently, the scope 3 emission standard for the telecommunications industry. We are working on the scope 3 emission standard for the data centers. So we will leverage all this research to support the successful outcome of this project that hopefully will see life very, very soon. So thank you so much to NEC, to EAND. I really look forward, and Jesse is looking forward really to shortly to come, to a conclusion, so we can go on the implementation and driving this project across the industry. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Luis. Saeed.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody here, and welcome in Dubai. I think I'm excited here to be with you today uh, and to work with JC and NEC for, let's say that to convert our initiative that we work together and we think about it 1 year back to be live and to be like meeting our expectation toward the sustainability and the carbon emission reduction. On E and we are covering all the technology sectors. We are a telco providers, one of the main provider in the region, and also we are presenting on 16 countries. We plan to expand to 20 countries. We are entering to Europe on 4 countries by end of the year. We are providing on top of the connectivities as a telco, we are providing all the cloud solutions, security solutions, IoT solutions, all the solutions which is touches the customers. So how to make sure that what we are providing is towards our ambitions to on the carbon emission reduction by 2030. we start on COP27 talks about scope 1 and 2, and today we are talking about scope 3, that procurement will play a big role on this scope. And we plan to have or to achieve 25% reduction in scope 3 by 2030. This is our ambition. How to achieve that targets? We are working together with our partners, NEC, JC, to go through all the initiatives, even if it is small initiatives. How these small initiatives can be converted to a reality. How this can be added value to the environment from sustainability point of view. I'm glad that we are working together. I think this uh, COP28 here is for all the countries and all the companies to work together as one team in order to deliver. And I think we'll come through some of the initiatives that EAN took in place in the past few months, that we believe that if all the operators in the world, all the companies in the world move in this direction, this will add a lot of value to our planet. I'm glad to be with you here. Yeah.
Thank you, Saeed. And if the presentation could be pulled up, please.
Okay. Shall I go?
It's still pulling. It's coming up.
That's still not done.
No, this is my presentation.
Oh, great.
This is the start.
Okay.
Okay.
It's marbles. So while I'm talking, you can think about what the marbles are. The question for the audience is, which marble is best? But let me while you're thinking about that, let me add a couple of pieces. So one, now I feel special, which is good. I've been a researcher my entire life, and I know that good research starts with good hard problems. And I think we have a good hard problem that
Yeah.
doesn't, matter just to us. It matters to the world. Um, and good research from that hard problem requires good trusted partners. And I think we have a good partnership here that's been executing, as I would say, a very, very nice fashion, where all the parties bring something to it that allows us to know and understand something that we couldn't do on our own. And I think that's the key. And you're going to hear me say collaboration, 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 because I really think that one of the biggest challenges to humankind, to society, is how we can actually globally collaborate to solve problems, right? And that could be COVID, right? That's one piece there. But the really big one is supply chain, right? Global supply chain has been optimized to a point. We've now found that it's not robust to um, global conflict. It's not robust to global climate change. We have the ability to actually redesign the global supply chain in a way that not only is more robust, not only saves money for companies, but it also may save the planet in reducing the amount of carbon we actually produce to do the things that we do globally. And that kind of a situation, again, from my researcher background, when you get alignment of commercial, of what makes sense and what we need to do the world, that alignment is what drives change, and that's where we're going to go. So let me get back to the marbles. So if I ask you which is the best marble here, right? And if you look at it and you think about it, it's probably a hard decision to make because there's lots of diversity in these marbles, right? Some people might like blue, some might like yellow, some might like big marbles, some might like small marbles. But this is the global decision-making challenge that we have. Because even if you can do this, the person next to you has probably chosen a different marble, right? And the other thing that we often miss in global optimization, can we have the next slide?
Next slide, please.
In global optimization is we think about the fact that optimization is to a peak, right? So you can think of Mount Fuji here. We think that there is one optimum, but there isn't, right? Each of us in this audience picked a different marble, which means that we all have our own criteria for best. And that's why global supply chain is hard. That's why climate change is hard. You have many, many parties trying to optimize, and it doesn't look like this. Can we switch to the next slide? Global optimization more often looks like this. There's not one peak, and that peak actually changes a lot over time. And that's why this is a hard problem. This is why it's a global problem. And that's why this sort of evolution of digitization that got us to automate and to evolve to where we are right now is actually changing. And it's changing to look like not just trying to understand what's going on, but trying to optimize what's going on. And not just within our own companies, but across all the different companies that we have. And that's why this project, I think, is a very interesting one, because it's something that is beneficial to all of us, but propagates to be something much, much larger. So can we switch to the next slide? So this global supply chain, you can see, is many, many different parties trying to agree and try and make this connectivity. So how do we actually solve that? Can we go to the next slide? Next slide, please. So I I didn't put any equations in. I'm typically a researcher, but I think this is a very interesting model for what we're looking at, right? If you're really thinking about what has to happen for the global supply chain, it's a combination of policy, right? Governments driving behavior and trying to give incentives to set that metric, which marble is best from a carbon perspective. It has a negotiation aspect, which is which companies talk to which other companies and what decisions are made in order to drive to that global optimization. And the piece that is most relevant in what we're talking about today is the simulation piece. When you have a system that is so complicated, has so many pieces, that it's very difficult to understand what is best versus what is a good change. Being able to ask that what if question is really what we're trying to deal with. And we're doing it not with scope 1 or scope 2, but scope 3, where we may not even be able to get the right information from the suppliers in order to do this. So we're building the methodology for understanding scope 3 in a way that goes from us more broadly. And last two slides, I'll just put them in very quickly. Next slide. So I started with marbles, and I'll talk a little bit about ants. So the reason I said ants is because if you think about it, and can we go to the next slide? It's amazing that ants can actually self-organize. If you've ever seen ants go after food, it's quite amazing. And they don't have cell phones, they don't communicate. There's no central ant control that is telling them what they're doing. It is a large number of independent entities that interact with a well-defined set of rules. And that is the starting point for how we're doing the modeling for supply chain. And if we go to the next slide, it's my last one in this set. We're using what's called an agent-based modeling system to do this. And that means that every supplier is an agent. We're exchanging resources, right? Could be money, could be equipment that's being purchased, and we have a topology or a connectivity between them. And by building this kind of simulator, it allows us to manage and try and understand the supply chain aspects that are most relevant to our optimization. And that gets us back to the marble question of how do we actually define what marble is best, and how can we use this simulation to understand an inherently complex system as a combination of very simple things that are driven by simple rules. So that's my brief introduction on where we're going.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Chris. And you talked earlier in the introduction about the importance of trust and constructing solutions to challenges as big as climate change.
Yeah.
And we talk, obviously, we've got a great partnership here between NEC and EAND. And Jesse, representing the nonprofit sector, what is the role of government and policy and helping shape digital solutions? So to use your ant analogy, that you have a lot of different entities participating. How do you help direct the role of policy that's supportive of the types of
Yeah.
digital solutions that you're talking
Yeah.
about?
So in the end analogy, the government's role is to put cupcakes every once in a while and drive the global behavior, right? The problem with that is the government needs to know where to put those cupcakes. And that's what the simulation is trying to do, trying to understand how you can actually use a light touch to change that metric, right? What is the best marble from what is a good marble? And do that in a way that the government can actually drive the behavior that they want overall, right? And if we look at this, right, the whole reason for this negotiation, policy, and simulation piece is the policy piece is the overall way that we can actually reduce our total consumption, right? Because that requires some incentive from government to actually drive that global behavior. But the negotiation piece is really the optimization that allows us to actually drive for greater and greater efficiency. And those two things, the overall behavior change, which is going to be slow, and the very quick optimization and efficiency, which is going to be much faster, those two come together to give us the final solution that we need. And what we're doing here in the work with EN is really in the microcosm of their very large, very complicated supply chain, solving this problem in a way that hopefully we can then replicate to multiple companies, multiple countries, and really solve the collaborative optimization problem for the world.
And so, Saeed, as we come over to you, so Chris has talked about the possibilities and the potential and the participants in the solution. You have got an incredible level of responsibility overseeing procurement for all of EN, which is in a number of solution areas that you talked about, 16 countries, getting to 20 by the end of this year. What do you see? What's your perspective on the role that EN can play in driving these sustainability outcomes?
Yeah, from procurement point of view, or let's say touching on the supply chain. First of all, I think in order to move ahead with the ambitions toward the 2030 targets that we put as an and I think everybody should have these targets. We need to do a complete transformation to our procurement, and this touches on the even on the mindset of the procurement people that they are executing this function. We start with the different initiatives, and one of the initiatives that we work with NEC and JC on the how to be proactive. I mean that we have now hundreds of suppliers that we are working with. How to make sure that, as I like what Chris represent, the marbles, all of them looks bright and nice, but which one that you select and will add a lot to our environment. This is the main, let's say, objective of the initiative that we worked together for the past 1 year. So the procurement that they are executing the sourcing activities, they will select the best suppliers that they will be, let's say, we call it environmental friendly, and they will provide less carbon to our planet. This is the initiative that we are working with. But at the same time, we have a lot of other initiatives. Like for 1 week, we announced our green SIM card initiatives. What is a green SIM card? Everybody knows the SIM card is manufactured from plastic. How can I make this SIM card green? Is to manufacture it from the recycled items and a stop production of plastics. It's a small initiatives, and we order 500 to half a million green SIM cards before COP28. And all the SIM cards, I think the visitor they will join COP28, they will use this green SIM cards. Imagine if all our planets they convert to the green SIM card and they start using the recycled material from refrigerators or other electronics. So how much plastic that will be stopped and how much carbon that will be eliminated. This is one of the initiatives that we work with. And we, as I mentioned, that the complete, let's say, structure of the procurement and supply chain, it's under transformation. We used to have before we call it a digital transformation, and we work on that for the past 3 years to transform our procurement to be fully digitized. Now we have to think about how we can transform this digital to be more sustainable. So it's a complete structure of the supply chain and manufacturing, starting from onboarding of the supplier, who's let's say the green supplier, till the project is executed and the technology is selected. And this will be embedded by the latest technology we have. And we can see how the technology get innovated very fast for the last 2 to 3 years. And this happened up because of the situation that we had in the COVID. The Gen AI, how the Gen AI will help the procurement and supply chain to be more fast and more agile and select the best solution that we had towards sustainability, towards the carbon emission reduction on all this criteria. This, but the supply chain and procurement not anymore looking after the cost reduction. No, we have to introduce more factors towards the sustainability to be part of the, let's say, the life cycle of the supply chain. And this is at E&, we start working on this towards the 2030. We need to start now. And this will require, again, collaboration, collaboration, collaboration from all. Because not only we, our supplier, NEC, JC, we're working with the JC closely on this. We're working with other suppliers globally to be part of this program in order to move very fast, to be more sustainable, and to have less carbon emission to the planet. But this is our ambition, and this is what we are looking for. Thank you.
Wonderful. And so, Chris, coming back to you, so Saeed gave a great example of choosing a marble, which was the green SIM card,
Yeah.
which is operationally, I have to imagine, Saeed, that is a really complicated task. That once he chooses that marble, he's committing a significant part of his organization to an outcome that may take what Saeed that months, maybe even years to fully execute the transition to green SIM cards. An optimization model might say next week you should pick a different marble.
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with that relationship with
Yeah.
business operators who have already told their organization this is where we're going? You know, it's a difference between a mountain and and a
A
desert
dune.
and a dune. And so, how do you coordinate effectively with business operators when plans and priorities shift so quickly?
Yeah, so there's a lot of pieces to that, obviously, and very, very challenging. I think one of the pieces that's actually nice is that it's not a peak. It's not a Mount Fuji thing, which means that um, if you pick the wrong marble, it's not a survive or die kind of thing. It is a dune, and that means you pick the marble, but then you have to move around in the space, and your next decision has to be moving things better and better, right? That to some degree, I mean, again, I'm a researcher, but from a business perspective, it's always the ground's moving underneath you, and you're trying to always just move incrementally in the right direction. And I think one of the issues, again, if we get to the research side, one of the human things is humans are really good at knowing one step, right? The implications of that decision. But most big decisions actually propagate, right? There's three or four things that happen because you made this decision that happens three or four times and that gets much, much bigger. And understanding the complexity for how a single decision propagates is why we actually build these simulators. Because the easiest optimization in the world is the one that you can try over and over and over again, right? If you can try every marble for the best, then you're done because you can easily find that. But if you're only allowed to pick one marble, you better be real sure that's the right one beforehand, and that's where simulation comes at play. And I'll say another piece, right? Um, the research that we do and the project that we're working on here, if it doesn't result in EAND being able to make a better decision, a more well-informed decision, one that is less risk and more reward, then we failed, right? I mean, we can build lots of methods, lots of simulators, but the value of that research only comes to fruition when it enables a decision to be, again, more supported in that context.
So, Saeed, coming back to you, um, we all recognize that on average, 80% of most companies' emissions are scope three.
Yeah.
And so Chris is talking about these simulations that the marble keeps moving. I think we're sticking with this analogy for the rest of the conversation, Chris. Thank you for bringing that. Um, how do you work with your team in an interactive way with a research-based model that's continuing to give you information of what your next move is? Because you're a business executive, you're used to making decisions, you make judgments every day on what to prioritize. How do you integrate the output of a solution like what Chris and the NEC team has created in order to say, before we might have gone this way, but the optimization solution is saying we should go over here. How do you reconcile when the model and the solution optimization might tell you one thing that you should be doing, but your instincts are to tell you another?
I think here we need to balance between what the simulator that will advise us or to move in which direction and how this will be impacting our business, because we need to make sure that the services not get interrupted and the same quality of service is provided. But the good thing that the simulator will give, like, take an example that if we have a multiple let's say supplier, they are supplying the same category, let's say a radio access, for example, and currently each supplier they have a percentage, a market share. So the simulator will give me exactly, if I go with the same a business as usual, this will be like my carbon production and this how level of impact on the emission. If I go with a different market share percentage, this will be, let's say, towards to be more green. So again, the simulator also it will help the operator from one side, and it will create a competition on the supplier also to be more green, to introduce more, let's say, features, enhanced products that to be more sustainable and with a less carbon emission and power consumption. But it's like a combination from both. But as an again, we need to balance. We need to make sure that the services, because at the end we are also responsible for the business continuity and to make sure our services is moving. But it's a both. How to The smart thing is how to make sure that we are in the right direction, but our service is not impacted, and we are choosing the best and solution to provide the service. This is the criteria that we are focusing on, and the simulator will add all this. Instead of that, we are, let's say, depends on the individuals, and you have to have army. You have to hire a lot of people to do all this. What simulator now they are created, because they will be it will be based on the big database that we collected from all our suppliers, and by one click, the simulator will give you exactly where to go. It's an amazing tool that we worked for the last 1 year on, and this will help, I think, all the operators to define their direction toward the sustainability.
And so, Chris, as you look at the capability that you all have collectively collaborated on that optimizes not just for cost savings but also for carbon, and you start to figure out how to bring it into practice with partners like EN, where do you go from here? Like, what's the next frontier of the solution? What's the solution 2.0 look like? Or is it a continued evolution as you get more inputs from other suppliers to EN and it becomes more robust in its predictive capability? Or is there a different direction that you see an optimization solution going in the future?
Yeah, so I think if I go from 2.0 to 3.0, 4.0, 5.0, right? So if you take this to its natural extension and you think about the word a little bit, um, we really need uh, I'll reclaim Internet of Things
Mhm.
for not just widespread sensing, but the internet that actually allows us to optimize the global supply chain, right? So a company like EN should be able to say, here are my metrics. These are the kind of marbles I like. This is what I need. They should be able to expose that to the world through some kind of global connectivity platform that then responds back with, maybe in an automated fashion, here are the results. Here's, this is the contract, and it might be a micro contract, right? It might be something that only lasts a very short period of time for a very small amount of material, or it might be something longer than that. But the idea of providing a globally accessible, digitized supply chain
Yeah.
has to be the end result, right? We've moved from digitizing data to global connectivity and communication, right? The movement of physical assets has to be the next evolution of what we see inside of that space. And I think this is a small step on that, right? EAND is a great partner for us because it's not just one person buying one widget, right? Their supply chain is robust and complicated and lots of vendors, and there's, you know, a lot of potential for us to tweak and understand and optimize things. That's what has to happen on a global scale, right? The trick, again, if you go back to the marbles and everything else, right? If everybody's picking their own marbles but not talking, we don't end up with a globally optimal solution. You have a bunch of individual solutions. Inside of a large company like EN, you don't have a globally optimal solution unless you're looking at the problem from a global perspective. And you go from global perspective inside of EN to global perspective on the world. That's how we drive for efficiency. That's how we reduce carbon. That's how we actually save money, which turns into raising quality of life. So there's a really big picture that I think we all should be aiming for that could be as big or bigger than the digitization of communication that we all are, benefiting from today.
And so, coming back, Saeed, to you as a practitioner and an operator, you get to choose winners and losers when you make supply chain
Yeah.
decisions, right?
Yes.
And now that you're picking not just on cost, you're also picking on climate outcomes
Yeah.
and carbon reduction. Do you see or do you expect to see among your suppliers any changes in behavior in the way that they operate in order to deliver for you? Because before, maybe if they all are competing on price, they're just competing on price. Now you're asking them to also compete on climate. So
Yeah.
you're having a huge influence on your supply chain. Are you beginning to see any changes in behavior among your suppliers who are starting to realize I can't just provide a solution for less money? I also need to have a climate outcome. Is that showing up in your supply chain today?
Yeah. Actually, when you let's say during the sourcing cycle, which we are when we go through the technical evaluation, a part of the technical evaluation, there is a criteria has been already set towards sustainability, which touches on the let's say the power consumption, carbon production, and all this stuff. Even we talk about what raw material used on this the product that we are sourcing. We see there is a move and there is a competition between the suppliers towards the sustainability, but the pace is differ from one supplier to another. And this is why we are creating this, let's say, the criteria to select the best supplier from quality and from the, let's say, the environment friendly point of view. Uh, but this, let's say, I will go back to the simulator we did. We need to give chance to those suppliers.
Mm.
So we have to balance again and the market share here instead of going, let's say, and talk the supplier out of the market. No, we are giving them a chance to improve and to show their because at the end we don't want to eliminate, let's say, and limit ourselves to only one supplier. This will be touched on again a business continuity in case of something happen. But we need to make sure that diversification is there. There is multiple of suppliers we have in the supply chain, and all of them on the same level of, let's say, a criteria of sustainability criteria that we set during the sourcing, uh, let's say, process. And this one again, what the simulator will add to the let's say the evaluation committee that the one who will decide on which direction to go. All the supplier now they are working hard toward toward the sustainability, toward the reduction of the carbon emission. But it's required operator also to put pressure. So we have to keep the pressure. We have to keep the, let's say, this creation of the competition environment between the suppliers. So to see the results, it is accelerate. We can see there is an acceleration on this. There is a new versions of products that we are buying. If you go 2 years back, you will see that the power consumption get reduced by 50%. There is a new enhanced feature has been created, and they're using also artificial intelligence. Like for example, if the equipment it is during the lean traffic time, if there is no traffic, the equipment by itself will be shut down. There's no power consumption. But there is a smart solution. We saw that it is start integrated with the new product or our solution that we are sourcing at end. But the market is moving in the right direction, but we need to accelerate. And how to accelerate? To work together toward that's when we need the support from the suppliers, and we need to have the right solution, right tool in our hand as a supply chain and procurement to evaluate and to select the best on the market.
Chris, Said made a really interesting observation here, which I hadn't thought of before this conversation, which is giving suppliers a chance to learn and giving suppliers a chance to change while you're making an optimization decision.
Hmm.
Mm.
Can you talk a little bit about? So I think one of the things that we're all excited about is sort of the enabling potential of these solutions. As a researcher, how do you build in that ability of suppliers to change? And like, at what point do you say you're not changing fast enough? We need to switch to somebody else. How does that come into your work in solution development?
Yeah, so I think there's we have to draw lines between the scientific side and the business side of things, right? Because the issue in many of these cases is it's not that there's bad suppliers, right? Maybe there
Right.
are some bad suppliers, but it's suppliers that have made decisions that are not consistent with the needs of EN, for example, or the consistent with someone else. So at some level, they're doing their own local optimization based upon what they view as is critical globally. And in the situation where the amount of information has increased, right? Because we're looking at scope 3 here. Part of the reason is because maybe it's late, so I can be controversial. Everybody lies, right? It's very hard to nail these things down, and it's not, well, maybe not lies, but it is almost impossible to get really accurate scope 3s,
Yeah.
right? And the only way to actually improve that is to come up with an estimate that is better than just guessing, right? And that's what the simulator does. It basically says, we think that this is the answer, right? And I suspect there's going to be a lot of conversations for and everyone else. Here's the estimate with the supplier, and the supplier says, no, that's not us, right? And there's going to be an iteration there that will either improve the model or actually squeeze an inefficiency out of the system, but it certainly will increase the amount of information that's transferred, right? So if you think about optimization, right, and again, I'll go to the geeky direction a little bit. The number of tries you get to better answers, because if you can try a bunch of things, you can find out what works and what doesn't work. Um, but if you can't try a lot, the amount of information that you share, right, the global information that you have increases the potential to get to a much better minimum in the system, right? And that's why you'll hear me say that global optimization and sort of collaborative decision making is the biggest challenge for all of us, because the globally optimal results are only going to come with lots of information sharing, but countries don't want to share everything. Companies don't want to share everything. So, how do you balance that line between trying to drive for the global optimal and trying to actually simultaneously protect information from sharing too many things? And so I think, going back to your specific question, the way this optimization becomes more global is the information that is shared allows people to make different decisions with respect to how they locally optimize to lead to a much better global result. And the nice piece about this, it's not a trade-off, right? It's not that we're all going to have to come down off of the peak. It's that now we can actually, because we're collaborating, it opens up new directions, new horizons, and we can actually settle on something that is more optimal with respect to costs and more optimal with respect to carbon, and probably robustness and stability. That information sharing gets us to a better solution.
And I think, Chris, the example you shared or the comment you made about scope 3 and everybody lies,
It's
the reality of the challenges in verifying information in
yes.
scope 3 work um, brings me to the final question I'd like you both to respond to, and I'll start with you first, Chris, is where does this go from here in terms of scaling? Because you have this very collaborative, trusted relationship with Saeed and EANT, but you have business relationships with many organizations at NEC. But then, even more broadly, just across the telecommunications sector or other sectors, um, collaboration in support of not just cost outcomes, but also climate outcomes is a massive opportunity and also a huge challenge. How do you, what do you see coming in the future that enables the type of optimization solution you've created here What do you see as that begins to scale to more companies and to more industries?
Yeah, so I think you start with large companies who are very robust, complex supply chains into themselves, right? More than a single person can keep in their head, and many, many steps of changes. And then once you have large companies doing that, then the large companies are going to want to try and jointly optimize because they can see that it's going to improve their relationship and overall give more profit to both sides, right? So it's going to reduce cost and increase margin. And then once you have that happening, then it propagates to the sort of global Internet of Things where we have an optimization that happens more globally. So I think that's the end result for a supply chain. I think the other interesting thing, though, is um, I don't know about all of you, but I have continuous decision fatigue personally, and I think that um, we see a lot around AI, we see a lot around machine learning, large language models, all those kinds of things. Um, I think the thing that is going to most be disruptive to our lives is a better understanding of decision making. The extension of that to not just our decisions for our local optimum, but our community, our, much more global. And I think that beyond supply chain decision making for life and direction and all those kinds of things, I think that's where you're going to see another really big disruption that comes in place. I don't think that we're going to create um, a fully intelligent AI system that people are going to embrace. I used to make the joke that we all had from very young age a system that told us what we needed to do, how we needed to dress, how we needed to eat. We called them mom and dad, and most of us left home and didn't want them to be defining everything for us. So I think what we will see is the sort of consumer side of that line of decision augmentation, which makes your life easier to manage all the things that are around. And I think that similar techniques are going to be at the corporate optimization. So there's going to be supply chain, but there's going to be also all the other decisions around marketing, around everything else that's done. Um, we've seen tremendous tools created to make us physically stronger, physically better, to build things and look around. It's amazing what we've done. Um, Trying to build tools that augment our ability to manage decision and manage information, I think is going to be a critical one as well. Because I think that's the challenge we all have right now. How do we deal with the information that we have, and how do we make decisions that are right in that space?
Yeah, decision fatigue. That is a real. So why Steve Jobs said he always wore a black turtleneck was because he wanted to reduce one decision
Yes.
every day. Um, Saeed, as the solution scales up and you look across other parts of your portfolio, how do you see that changing in the way that you operate going forward?
And from the EAN point of view, I see the simulator now is like the first piece of the journey.
Mhm.
We just started building, let's say, the base, because this is simulator will give you like to be more proactive. It will, let's say, support us on which direction to move with. But what I can see, or the E and ambitions, is that this cannot be done without a collaboration from all, and this cannot be done without integrating of the latest technology. As a supplier from one side, they have to be part of this, and the supplier who will not decide to be part of it, they will be, let's say, taken out from this from the journey. We are moving on this. We decided that E and we have the targets by 2030. The transformation started. We collaborate with NEC and JC to build that base, but we need all the suppliers to work together. And already we started. We communicated with the main supplier in the world now, touches all the categories on the networking, on the cloud, everywhere, in the computing, in all across, let's say, the categories and the network levels that layers that we have to be part of this journey. And this will require also a collaboration from not only from the supplier, including also the transportation, because today we are measuring also how this, let's say, the product that we're ordering, how it is transports, from where the raw materials came. At what Chris saying, that is The challenge part is how we create this big data and how the supplier will be cooperate with us to provide all this, let's say, detailed information to us. But we have to push on this direction. And I believe from EAN point of view that what the response I receive from the supplier, they are very keen to work with us on this direction, and they want to show some results down the road. And I believe in COP next year also we'll see some results, but more than we'll elevate on the simulator that we built together with NEC and JC, and more to come in the coming years.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Saeed Al-Zaruni, Head of Procurement for EAN, Chris White, President of NEC Labs, Luis Neves, CEO of Jesse. Thank you all. We will close out this conversation on the digital collaboration to achieve carbon neutrality and all about the marbles and
All about
ants.
the marbles.
Now, but
Thank you.
thank you.